Welcome to Dejobnik, your command post for clarity and perspective.
Everyone, and thank you all for joining me. I'm Israeli Government Spokesperson Raquela Karamson, and this is March 21st, day 167 of the October 7th war. 167 days since the lives of all Israelis changed forever. More than 1,200 lives brutally snuffed out, entire families murdered. 253 lives violently ripped out of their homes, their very beds, watching their entire neighborhoods burn to the ground as they were taken into captivity in Gaza. Therefore, our goals in this war remain steadfast. Bring home our hostages, destroy Hamas, and achieve total victory. Gaza will never again pose a threat to us. From the get-go, our objective has been to focus on terrorists of Hamas and Islamic Jihad, not ordinary Gazans. Consistently, we have warned and guided the residents of Gaza to leave and stay away from the fighting, creating safe humanitarian corridors and delivering an unprecedented amount of aid to civilians. As our Minister of Strategic Affairs, Ron Dermer, said today, after all those statements in support of the Jewish people, when we were victims, you abandon us now on the last leg of our victory against this genocidal terrorist force? Shameful. I would now like to give you an update on COGAT. COGAT, of course, is a department that coordinates and facilitates humanitarian aid entering Gaza. Yesterday, 77 tons of food was airdropped over northern Gaza. 189 humanitarian trucks were inspected by Israel and transferred to Gaza. Of the 120 trucks that were transferred into Gaza, only 72 were distributed by the UN. If there is indeed an aid or food crisis in Gaza, it is squarely on the side of distribution. Our message to the UN is clear. We are doing our part. Try doing yours. Hamas started this war on October 7th, and any related consequences rest at their door. Israel's COGAT has delivered 17,647 trucks of humanitarian aid and counting. Again, it is the UN's job to distribute it. I would like to turn now to an operational update from Gaza. Specifically, the IDF's ongoing targeted operation to rid the Shifa hospital of terrorists. Hamas returned to the Shifa hospital and attempted to regain control and return the hospital to their command center, once again trying to use the most vulnerable as human shields. This cannot and will not be allowed. The IDF continues to foil these plans. Since this operation began, over 140 terrorists have been eliminated in the area of the hospital, and more than $3 million in cash earmarked for terrorism, including infrastructure and weapons, were found in the Shifa hospital area. During this ongoing operation, around 3,700 Gazans heading south were able to move through the checkpoints near the hospital. The IDF also provided a fuel truck and humanitarian aid to local Gazans, about 1,800 liters of water, and about 4 tons of food. I would like to turn now to the situation on Israel's northern border. Yesterday, Hezbollah launches were identified in the areas of Hardof, Yeron, Misgav, and Margilot. The IDF returned fire and struck the sources of these attacks. Additionally, IAF fighter jets also struck Hezbollah military compounds in Hula, Kantara, and other Hezbollah posts in the area. Now to Ramadan here in Israel. As tomorrow is Friday, I would like to remind you that Israel maintains freedom of worship while ensuring public safety. Tens of thousands of worshippers have entered the Temple Mount in recent days, and prayers are taking place peacefully. Hamas and others spreading incitement and false news on social networks in order to encourage violence and disrupt the holiday should not be given attention. We call on the general public to not buy into or share these tactics of fear and terrorism. And finally, I would like to share with you a readout of the conversation between our PM and U.S. President Biden yesterday. The PM expressed his thanks for U.S. support, and of course the U.S. and Israel always agree that Hamas must be eliminated. Our only disagreement are on the best way to achieve this goal. our PM said, and I quote, "It is impossible to complete the victory without the IDF entering Rafah in order to eliminate the remnants of Hamas's battalions." The PM made clear that the cabinet has approved the IDF's operational plan, which includes the evacuation of civilians from the battle zone. President Biden asked to present Israel with proposals in the humanitarian sphere and also on other topics. The PM said, and I quote, "There have been times that we have agreed with our friends, and there have been times that we have not agreed with them. In the end, we have always done what is vital for our security, and this is what we will do this time as well." That brings me to the end of today's briefing. I will now take your questions in the chat. Please do state your news outlet along with your question. Thank you.
Thank you. First question from Hannah Julian of the Jewish Press. Can you comment on the news that the US has submitted a draft resolution to the United Nations Security Council calling for an immediate ceasefire even before Israel's delegation arrives for talks next week in Washington?
Thank you, Hannah, for the question. I think that question might be better addressed to Secretary Blinken's team. I will say, however, that our goals in this war remain the same. Bringing our hostages home and eliminating Hamas and making sure they can never pose a threat to us from Gaza ever again. And also to everyone calling for, a ceasefire or for this war to end, this war could end this afternoon. If Hamas surrendered and returned our hostages, this war would be over.
Thank you. Another question from Hannah Julian. Also, do you have a response to Secretary Blinken's call for the establishment of a Palestinian state?
We have heard those reports, and again, I think that question would be better addressed to Secretary Blinken's team. I don't have any comment at this time.
Thank you. Question from David Clement at the News Forum. Secretary of State Blinken has said that the gaps are closing regarding a ceasefire or hostage exchange deal. Does the Prime Minister's office have any comment about these gaps and the prospect of a deal?
Thank you for the question. Obviously, I can't comment live on air about the ongoing negotiations to free our hostages. But I will reiterate that Israel will do everything in our power to bring our civilians and our hostages home. And like I said, these talks are ongoing, and at this moment, I can't comment on them.
Thank you. Question from Joel Pollack at Breitbart News. U.S. Senator Sherrod Brown said that he did not trust either Hamas or Israel to obey a ceasefire. Is there any reason not to trust Israel to adhere to a ceasefire, whether temporary or permanent?
Those comments, I think, are unfortunate, as every ceasefire that we've had in the last few years with Hamas has been broken by Hamas. Israel has always adhered to any agreements that we've come to in any ceasefire deals.
Thank you. Question from Carrie Khan at NPR in the USA. Is there hunger in Gaza?
Again, I've heard those reports, and I think it is absolutely unfortunate that credible news organizations and countries around the world are buying into Hamas narrative. What's interesting is that every time we have arrested or captured Hamas terrorists, they have been quite fed. They're in good health. They are robust sometimes. I think this myth that there is hunger in Gaza is exactly that, a myth. And the other thing I would say is, again, as I said in the briefing, on the distribution side, we are doing everything in our power for aid to enter Gaza. Now, the aid organizations, the UN, the powers that be within Gaza, they have to distribute the aid. It is on them. We are doing our part, and they need to do theirs.
Thank you. Question from Hamdan Salhut of Al Jazeera English. Can you comment on reports that the UK will not supply weapons to Israel if it does not abide with international law, something Israel has been accused of violating?
Thank you for the question. I'm not familiar with those exact reports, but I will say that Israel, the people of the UK, the people of the US, the people of the Western world understand what the people of Israel are going through, and we have broad support in the Western world. As for when we see those reports, if they come up, we will deal with them at that time.
A question from Jim Williams at Zenga International News Service, Washington, D.C. Yesterday, when the Prime Minister met via video call with the Republican members of the United States Senate and the Speaker of the House, did he ask them why Republicans were blocking President Biden's and Democrats' aid package to Israel?
Again, I was not on that call, so I don't have an immediate comment to that at this time. However, I will say the U.S. has been our best friend, and we've worked hand in hand with them since the beginning of this war. And the U.S. and Israel, as I said in the briefing, agree that Hamas must be eliminated.
Thank you. That's the last question.
Thank you all for joining us today. Join us again Monday next week.
Thanks for watching. Drop a comment below. Don't forget to like, share, and hit subscribe to stay updated with our latest content. Until next time, stay informed and inspired. This is Dejobnik signing off.